It probably started when the great hunter ran out of arrows. Plucking the string causes it to vibrate, which makes the air vibrate too, and we hear a sound. Short strings vibrate faster and make a higher pitched sound. With strings of different lengths, a tune can be played. And the harp was born. It wasn't long before everybody wanted one. Harps have a separate string for each note. The strings can be plucked hard for a loud sound or gently for a soft sound. The tones can be separate or blended together. The harp sounds as pleasing as it looks. Why does a harp look like that? All the possible string lengths between the longest and the shortest would make a harp that's too wide to play. But the modern harp uses only 47 of these strings for its scales. Brought together and evenly spaced, they form a curve, the harmonic curve. Tipping the bottom up will make the strings easier to reach. Harp strings are anchored to a board at the bottom. This is the sounding board. It echoes the vibrations of the strings, making the sound louder. The strings are stretched very tightly. Their pull can add up to almost 2,000 pounds. If the harp frame wasn't built really strong, then... But modern harps are quite strong. Modern harps are also complicated machines. There's a mechanism inside that allows the player to make the vibrating part of the string shorter to change its pitch. This adjustment is controlled by foot pedals. The foot pedals allow the harp player to produce 7 different scales. It's a way to make a few strings act like many. That sounds like a harpsichord. The harpsichord is like a harp with a keyboard. Its strings are stretched on a frame like a harp. There's the harmonic curve. Each string is plucked like a harp, but with special mechanical fingers which are operated by the keys. When a key is pressed, a tiny rounded pin moves up and plucks the string. These pins are called quills. Each string has its own quill and key. harpsichord has its sounding board under the strings. The vibrations of the string are carried to the sounding board through a strip of wood wedged between them. This connector is called a bridge. Since the strings are not pulling directly on the thin sounding board, but stretched on a rigid frame, many more can be used. Strings for all the notes of each scale. Over 100 thin wire strings. Their pull can add up to 5,000 pounds. If a harpsichord frame is not built to be really strong, then... But, of course, they are built well. The harpsichord is a marvelous invention. It's been around for hundreds of years. The keyboard allows many notes to be played at once. In any scale. But a light stroke on the key makes the same amount of sound as a heavy stroke. The harpist can play loudly and softly. No matter how slowly one presses a key, the tone does not get softer. For years, many clever people tried to think up ways to build a harpsichord that could be played both loudly and softly. Then in 1709, Signore Bartolomeo Cristofori, a harpsichord maker in Italy, had a great idea.
I have a great idea. Instead of plucking the strings like a harp, I will hit them with little hammers like a dulcimer. Then I can play loud and soft.
The ancient dulcimer? Of course. The dulcimer is played by bouncing two little hammers against the strings, like drumsticks. It's the bounce that starts the vibrations. And best of all, a hard bounce creates a loud sound. And a light bounce makes a softer sound. Just like a drum. But instead of just one hammer for each hand, Cristofori made a little hammer for each string, a tiny hammer for every note. He mounted the little hammers on hinges under the strings. Pressing the key throws the hammer toward the string. The hammer flies up from the post, hits the string, and bounces back. Perfect! A light stroke on the key makes a soft sound, and a heavy stroke makes a loud sound. He then added a second lever to operate a damper. The padded damper gently presses against the string when the key is released, which stops the sound.
That's nice. Now, what should I call it? It plays a forte. That means a loud in Italian language. And it plays a piano. That means a soft in Italian. Piano forte. I'm gonna call it the harpsichord with piano and forte.
Well, what Cristofori invented was really not a harpsichord at all, but a completely new instrument. For many years, it was known as the forte piano, and later as the piano forte. Finally, it was called simply the piano. A modern piano action has many more parts than Cristofori's did. But the little hammer for each note is still there. And there's the damper. The foot pedals change the sound in different ways. Like the harpsichord, the piano has strings, bridge, and sounding board. But the piano's strings are thicker and are stretched much more tightly to give a powerful, rich sound. The pull of all these strings can add up to 40,000 pounds. That's why pianos have a heavy iron frame. Don't worry, they are very well made.